Even though he's a long way from getting his official Washington, D.C. driver's license, 11-year-old Nico Frank can cruise anywhere and do anything he wants as a virtual player in the video game Grand Theft Auto 5.
Normally I'm a really good driver, but...
Sure.
And I do kind of like doing in this game some things that you just can't do in real life. In real life you can't kill people like this. Or in this game you can.
Like, what do you feel like when you do that?
That it's not very good. It is kind of fun to do some of the stuff though. Kind of like if you're a superhero in a game, you can't be a superhero in real life. So it's fun to kind of have like the fantasy sort of.
The game is labeled mature and designed for ages 17 and older because of the intense blood and gore, mature humor, and nudity. But Nico's mom, Carolina Lopez, says her 7th grader is sophisticated enough to be among the millions of fans to try the game during its first week on store shelves.
How did you make the decision that you were going to allow him to play the game?
Play the game. Well, we spoke with Nico, and he explained that he knows that's fiction, that's not real life. Nico's a very well-rounded kid, so we thought he's mature enough to know that that's a game, and he's not gonna go and apply that in real life.
Developers at Rockstar Games spent 5 years and more than $260 million fine-tuning the realistic graphics and developing a storyline filled with sex, stealing, shooting, and killing. The intense production paid off. It's on track to be the best-selling video game of all time.
It is not just unprecedented in the world of video games, it's unprecedented in the world of entertainment.
What makes this game so popular?
I think it's a combination of things. Rockstar doesn't make a lot of games. So when they make games, they automatically garner a lot of attention. So this is their crown jewel. Grand Theft Auto is the game. It's their Star Wars. They're known for making immersive experiences. So you can go into their worlds and not only play the game that they want you to play, but just roam around and do whatever you want.
Players can follow a storyline by accepting violent missions that include robberies and shootings.
So, you enjoying the party?
Or they can enter an alternate virtual world of free play where they choose their own adventure in the Southern California town called Los Santos.
Movies are overrated. TV? It's where it's at.
A satirical take on the city of Los Angeles.
This is your character. Who is this guy?
This is Michael. He's one of 3 characters that you control in this game.
We asked New York video game journalist Brian Crescenti to take us inside the critically acclaimed world of Grand Theft Auto 5.
This has a working, like roller coaster. So I'm going to run up here, and I can actually go up these stairs if I don't run out of breath. I've now spent $15 of my money to actually go on a roller coaster ride.
This is so cool. Okay.
So
it's not all violence, this game?
No. It's funny, if you really wanted to, barring the story, if you didn't care about the story, you could exist in this world and never be violent.
If you could pick out one thing about this game that you think is the best, absolute best thing in this entire game, what would you say is the best?
I think it's scope. The ability to do whatever you want in this game is something people aren't used to. It's you don't go into a movie theater, sit down to watch a movie, and then say, no, I don't want to see the end. I want to actually go over here and check this out.
Characters can swim, play tennis, and golf with their friends. They can even watch a movie.
They've created this entire world that is absolutely a satirical look at the United States and at politics and at everything that people are into right now. There's a lot of that, and I think that's really genius.
As enticing as the game is, Crescenti says he would not recommend it for his own 12-year-old son.
Why do you say this is not a game made for kids?
Because it deals with serious topics, and I think that if you look at the satire, for instance, that's the sort of stuff that's going to go right over a kid's head.
How would you describe the violence in this video game?
You can't deliver an experience to gamers that allows them to decide what they want to do unless you allow them to decide what they want to do. So if they decide they want to be violent, this is a game, unlike a lot of games, that says, okay, be violent.
This is an example of how realistic this game can be and what these characters are capable of doing. If you take a look, I'm this guy right here with a club, and I can just beat somebody for no reason and just keep beating him. And I keep using this club to hit whatever I want.
Why you keep hanging around this clown, L?
The game also contains lots of racial slurs.
Why y'all can't get along?
And an opportunity for the male protagonist to receive a lap dance and touch a nude woman inside a virtual strip club. Innocent bystanders can be punched, kicked, beaten, and shot to death for no reason. The violence can get pretty extreme, and we wanted to know what effect a game like this could have on the person that's holding the controller.
We don't have any clear-cut research that shows that there is a cause or a causal relationship between violent video games and actions that people take.
Dr. Michael Fraser is a New York City clinical psychologist who specializes in video game addiction.
There are so many factors involved. I think factors that include personality, psychiatric history, parenting style.
Dr. Fraser says a child who already struggles with stress and social pressures might be likely to use immersive video games like Grand Theft Auto to escape from real life. That, he says, could lead to hours of obsessive playing, which brings its own problems, especially when it's time to put the game away.
It's almost like a withdrawal kind of behavioral sequelae. They may not be spending as much time paying attention to their hygiene. They may shower less. These are the kinds of games that tend to lend themselves to those kinds of problems.
What do you say to the people that say this is not a good game for kids?
Like my mom said, that it does depend on the kid, on like what they are like, or their personality.
I think a bigger question too is, of all the things that we can put in front of our children, why would we want to put this kind of image and this kind of video game in front of them when there's so many other things that they could engage in?
It's about to explode. It's about to explode. And then this is the door out.
Nico says his extracurricular life is balanced and filled with sports and music. He's too busy to become obsessed with a game, but he still plans to keep playing what is now considered the most popular video game in the world.
That report from our correspondent Lori Jane Gliha. We did, by the way, reach out to the game's developer, Rockstar Games, for comment. They did not, however, respond by our deadline. But we want to talk a little bit more about video games and parental warnings. And to do that, here's Daniel Greenberg. He is a freelance game developer himself. He is also a member of the International Game Developers Association and the chair of the Anti-Censorship and Social Issues Committee, specifically for that association. So I got to think that you must face this question fairly often when a new game like this, particularly one as popular as this, is released with this level of violence. And I have to wonder, I mean, since you know these issues are going to come up, why wouldn't the gaming community, since you know these issues are going to come up, why wouldn't the gaming community self-limit the kind of actions that you see in these games?
Well, that's like telling Steven Spielberg he needs to self-limit what he puts in movies because some people might be offended by what he puts in movies. I don't believe in telling artists, and video game developers are artists, I don't believe in telling artists what they can and cannot deal with or talk about. For instance, no one is going around saying that Breaking Bad is causing a nation of meth dealers, right? No one's saying the Godfather movie is making people be criminals. However, when it comes to video games or any new technology, people are quite willing to scapegoat, just like in the 1950s when Batman and Wonder Woman were the cause of juvenile crime, according to some psychologists.
Well, I would dispute you, though. I mean, people were critical of the level of violence and things like The Godfather and in Breaking Bad. I mean, people do criticize that, so it's not exclusive to the video games world.
And yet those haven't caused harm, and they're not being blamed for the kind of harm that people are eager to jump to with video games.
Or let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to disagree
okay,
about that
certainly.
part of it. But the part that I would wonder about is, all right, so if you have this level of development, I mean, really, in part, this is not so much that the level of violence is worse, or is it just because you are better at producing games, more realistic in your industry. Your art is better now, perhaps, than it was even a couple years ago. Is that part of the reason that it draws such an emotional reaction?
Well, movies are still more realistic, but video games, I think, are being criticized because they're new, because they're different. Everything that's new and different undergoes a period of extreme criticism for being responsible for the ills of culture. I've even heard that when novels were first created, they were blamed for the ills of society. Rock and roll, all the things that are now the touchstones of our culture that we now know are good were at one time blamed for being bad, just like video games are now.
So, but there has always been criticism, for example, of Elvis Presley and his rocking and rolling,
That's
as
right.
it were. So there is that, and there is the concern about the influence. Do you think that there is a level of violence that is too much to be depicted? Is there something too extreme? Is there an illustration that you would not create in a game?
Well, that's like, first of all, trying to constrain people who are creative because of my opinions has been a dead end all through history.
Would you?
Well, of course, I have my own limits about what I like to do, what I like to work on. I have made games that have violence in them, that depict violent situations, and I have my own decisions about how I make those games. For instance, I like to make games where the player always has a choice, where the player gets to make a choice and face the consequences of that choice. A lot of game developers are going down this route now, and there are games now which contain a large measure of imaginary violence, but in which the player can avoid that violence every single step of the way and can play the entire game and win without ever hurting or killing anyone.
And as is the case in Laura Jane's report, in Grand Theft Auto, you can play golf and not shoot anybody.
Right, but there are games where you can win the game, you can play the entire game without doing any harm to a virtual character, and these are the games that are most exciting to me, although Grand Theft Auto is a terrific game.
Daniel Greenberg, thanks very much for being with us. We'll continue with more of America.